Hey, welcome in. Hey, everybody, it's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson. Greg Silver is here as well, fine producer. And for today, co-host as we go live on the KNBR YouTube and Twitch pages here for the sports leader as we got the NFL taking center stage here over the course of the weekend. But the Warriors with a big win on Friday in Chicago. Stephen Curry took Saturday night off in Milwaukee, so not a lot to really evaluate from the Warriors in that one. But this game this afternoon and on into the evening, Greg, this was really the opportunity to see if the Warriors could build upon Friday. Basically throw Saturday out. Could they build upon Friday? Steve Kerr, even with Draymond Green back and all eyes on Draymond as he made his return, the question was, could the Warriors build off of Friday? And Steve Kerr went with the same starting lineup, Draymond Green coming off the bench. Warriors were hanging in, playing well, normal ups and downs, I thought, through the first 2.5 quarters. But midway through the third quarter, everything changed. And the Warriors basically fell completely apart. Turnovers, too many fouls, the three-point shot. Memphis put the highest opponent amount of makes that the Warriors have had, 20 plus for Memphis in this one. I'm looking what they finished with. They finished 20 of 54. So that was the most that any opponent has made in terms of threes. But it was just that stretch back into the third quarter and then on into the fourth where the Warriors just couldn't get on track. And the Grizzlies, despite no Ja and no Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. being terrible, I mean, the Warriors got it handed to them over the final quarter and a half. Just a brutal loss, erase everything from Friday. And now this team finds themselves 18-22 with one game to go here before the midpoint of the season on Wednesday. Greg, can we hear you? I'm making sure we can hear you. All right.
Sorry, I had myself on mute to do
Welcome
all the
in.
producer activities.
Don't mute yourself. I was hoping it wasn't me, and then I thought I got to jump in. But Greg, the floor is yours, man. I mean, this is just as bad a loss. This is as bad a loss as the Warriors have had, considering the Warriors basically having everybody back among Steph, Klay, and Draymond for the first time in a month, and the Grizzlies down as many players as they were.
No, that was disgusting. And I generally try to be more positive than negative when talking about the state of the Warriors and being more realistic and not speaking with my emotions and more with my brain. There's really nothing positive to say about that one. I mean, to me, this is the new low point in the entire season and the entire dynasty. I mean, 27-10 run after a minute 30 to go in the third quarter. There was a nice sequence of a Podziemski layup, a Trace Jackson-Davis block, and then a quick Kuminga dunk in transition. They're up 7. Grizzlies call timeout. That lead of 7 went quickly down to 1 with 3, turnover 3. And in the fourth quarter, they just got outworked, and it was handed to them. And this is a Memphis team that had no Ja Morant, no Brandon Clark, no Steven Adams, no Marcus Smart, no Desmond Bane. And Jaren Jackson Jr., their only true stud, was 4 of 20.
Yeah.
And 3 of 14 on shooting. So to go in and lose that game and to have it not just be some kind of a fluke, straight up embarrassing, terrible. It erases any positivity you can take away from, like we talked about, the moral victory from the Bucks on Friday. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss for words, and the amount of times they turned it over in the fourth quarter, just really inexcusable for a team that is trying to just re-legitimize themselves.
Yeah, and you look at the players that were committing the turnovers in this game, and the Warriors wind up with 19 turnovers, and Stephen Curry led the way. It was Stephen Curry with 5, and really Curry had just some dropped passes and just, I mean, unforced turnovers. And it just kind of makes you wonder, with him taking the game off. I mean, it so often, I always try to start with the best players. And Stephen Curry, I thought in the first half kept the Warriors in the game and ahead at halftime, given kind of an up and down flow to the first half. But in the second half, I mean, he was as big a part of the problem in terms of the turnovers as anybody. And, Saric had 4 turnovers. Don't think he played his best game tonight, even though he made 3. It's just kind of more of the same, Greg, in terms of we can kind of go up and down the roster, or we can go through the game from start to finish. And you can say, oh, well, this guy played well here, didn't play well there. Oh, this guy had a good stretch here, had an awful stretch here. And it just seems like, for the most part, too much of the Warriors roster and too much of these individual games, the Warriors just aren't doing enough against anybody. And I thought that was the big tell, kind of looking at the first half of this game for me, was the fact that, all right, Draymond's coming off the bench. Warriors are rolling with the same starting lineup as they did in Chicago, throw the Milwaukee game out, and they come out and they get off to a bad start. Draymond gets put into the game immediately with Podziemski and Kuminga, and they go on a 7-0 run. And you're thinking, all right, Draymond's back. He's making an impact on the game. That Curry, Podziemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond group had an 11-3 edge in the first quarter. And you're thinking, okay, Warriors are here now in this game, up 29-23 going into the second quarter. But then the start of the second quarter lineup, which featured some of the same players that were out there when the Warriors built the lead, immediately gives it back. Kuminga's out there with Trayce Jackson-Davis. Podziemski's still out there. Corey Joseph really struggled to the point where Steve Kerr finally went away from him in the second half. From the first half, played a little bit of Lester Quinones. And then Curry, amid things kind of going awry with that group top of the second quarter, pretty much single-handedly keeps the Warriors ahead at the half. Klay Thompson was if I had to look at one guy tonight that was just awful, like basically start to finish, I think it's Klay Thompson. Minus 22, 9 points, 4 of 10, 1 of 4 from 3. Tough matchups for Klay Thompson, again, against teams that you can say the Grizzlies don't have 5-6 of their best players, but they still have an athletic, lengthy group. And there are a lot of nights now, just put the rat on the table, where Klay Thompson, because the Warriors have guards that push him to the 3, because he can't really play the 2 anymore, like he's being forced to be a wing. And there's some nights he's okay at it against bigger, slower wings, but there's other nights against quicker, more athletic wings where he's pretty bad at it. And that leaves the Warriors really vulnerable. Again, this is one of just so many things to get into. Third quarter, Kerr went with the quick sub with Saric coming out and Draymond going in. Kuminga played some 3 tonight in both the third and the beginning of the fourth quarters. Just kind of running through my notes here, but it was basically another 8-0 run when Draymond went in the second half. Like, Draymond made a positive impact and I thought looked pretty good for the most part, but then Curry picked up his 4th foul. And I think that's when things got weird, because Steve Kerr took him out. The Grizzlies immediately cut the lead right back down to 1. And I think the turning point, and you alluded to this, it was basically Kerr went to this funky lineup, right? It was Podziemski, Quinones, Saric with Kuminga at the 3, and Trayce Jackson-Davis was out there. Draymond was out there, and then Trayce Jackson-Davis ended up going in the game. And then they built a 7-point lead and then immediately gave back the 7-point lead. It was Draymond and TJD at first, and then Sarge came in for Draymond after the fact to get the order right there. But the Warriors pushed it up to 7. Then they gave up the lead. And then, the fourth quarter, I mean, Curry hit a 3 to put the Warriors up 1, like you had mentioned, and then it was just completely all downhill. Curry and Jonathan Kuminga with a couple of brutal turnovers in that stretch. And the Warriors just found themselves up against it and couldn't overcome it. I mean, it's just ugly. And this, to me, Greg, now we lead back to, okay, we didn't find out anything on Friday in Chicago. And unfortunately, it kind of goes back now to where we've spent the better part of the last couple of weeks leading up to the Chicago game and this road trip where the Warriors are now 1-2, where the question starts to become, all right, the trade deadline's 3.5 weeks away. This team's going to have to make some kind of a move, because it just doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit, JD. And I think if there's one thing you can kind of learn from this game, because that's what I always try to do with any bad loss, is what information does it give you? I think there's one piece of information you get, and it's something we probably could have expected, but that's Draymond Green is not a Band-Aid for your problems. Draymond Green came back, hit a couple early shots, I think was actually being a very good teammate for the most part, like being very talkative, talking to his younger players.
He played well, right?
And he did. When I was cutting up some highlights, there were a couple I got to just kind of put ahead in case we use them on later shows when we're back in the studio and we can throw sound in there. There were a couple really nice defensive stands. They rotate differently with Draymond. I think Wiggins plays better as a defender when Draymond is out there. I think Kuminga plays better as a defender, especially off the ball when Draymond is out there. So there was no problems with Draymond Green in this game in his return. He wasn't rusty. He wasn't causing drama off the court. And still, it was probably the worst loss of the whole season. And yes, you could say like the Denver one was worse with the optics and collapsing like that. But just at face value, start to finish, I don't know how it gets lower than this, JD. And the three things I'm going to point to you before I kind of pivot it back to you is it's really the same three things that have been defining their season. No second source of offense besides Steph Curry, too many fouls to keep teams in the game, and too many turnovers, especially in the fourth quarter. I don't know how many times and ways we can say it. It's those three things that have just killed them over and over and over. And it happened against a team that had 3 wins at home without, 5 of their 6 best players?
Yeah, I mean, it was some heavy duty artillery and firepower that the Grizzlies did not have out there, from Ja to Bane, as you mentioned, to Adams to Clark. And then, I think we're missing 2 or 3 others.
Smart.
Yeah, Marcus Smart, who's obviously somebody they got from the Celtics. So no, there's no doubt. I mean, to lose that game and have the players that ended up going off for the Grizzlies to do it Vince Williams Jr. Comes in and scores 24 points in this game. You had G.G. Jackson in this game, not JJJ, but G.G. Jackson come into this game and give the Warriors the business. Gilliard was giving the Warriors the business. I mean, it really was. I mean, again, from that standpoint, I think it is as bad a loss, but it was just so telling to me at halftime that I thought the Warriors had played pretty well, and they were up 2. They played pretty well, and they were up 2, and Curry needed to carry the final 6-7 minutes of the half for them to be up 2. And that was with, all right, Kuminga did some things, and Wiggins was solid, and Draymond was back, as you mentioned. It's an indicator from a big picture standpoint that frankly, this team just doesn't have it. And as we get into the chat here on KNBR, the sports leader on the YouTube page, it's John Dickinson, it's Greg Silver, it's Dubs OT with JD, and today with Greg Silver here for KNBR, the sports leader, as the Warriors get thumped in the fourth quarter. At least it was a back and forth affair for the most part. 116-107 is the final. Grizzlies get the win, and the Warriors now 18-22, and the halfway mark of the season is Wednesday after the game in Salt Lake City against the Jazz. Ernie Chavez, I think, with the most telling statement here right off the top, they suck at defense. Like, the defense was not fixed for the Warriors tonight, which I think leads to the fact it's the 2 things you brought up, which are the things we always talk about when the Warriors lose. It's fouling and it's open threes, right? The Warriors give up a lot of points in the paint when things are not going well, and the Warriors give up a lot of open threes. I think they get the miscommunication on defense allows teams to get really good looks, and I think that's what at times, Greg, will lead to the poorer shooting teams or kind of no-name players having big nights, because these are still professionals, and if you're giving them wide open looks off of miscommunications, they're still going to knock them down, even if they're not name brand talent.
You know what's crazy, JD, is I was looking this up during the second quarter because I know that the announcers have talked about it a lot with teams having hot nights against the Warriors and making it seem like it's a crazy fluke. You know, the Warriors actually have, just statistically, the 10th best 3-point percentage defense in the league. And I think that just goes to show that stats do not really tell a full story sometimes.
Well, it's the nights you do it. Like that's the problem. And this is like so much, I think, of this team. It's indicative of like the nights that it's on, it's really on. And the nights that it's off, it's really off. And I feel like that's the bigger point about this team collectively. But I also think when you look at them individually, it's just if they get 2 or 3 guys that have a good night, then there's another 2 or 3 guys that they need that don't have a good night. And it always kind of winds up being enough. And the Warriors just can't win games off of one quarter anymore. Like we've talked a lot about that over the last month. Like they have to play a good, really 4 quarters, solid 4 quarters, no debacle, no stinker quarters will do them in for the most part, unless they have a spectacular quarter to offset it like they did against Chicago. They had both, but stinker quarters can do them in now. One great quarter doesn't win them games anymore. Like they just have to be more consistent. And I feel like the veterans, for as great as they've been throughout their career, Greg, the veterans are not used to, 1, having to play consistent 48-minute games, and 2, they aren't good enough anymore, unfortunately, to play closer to that. Or if it's not the full 48-minute game, to play at a really high level for 30 minutes of a game, which is enough to carry you to victory. And so, again, you find yourself looking up at the end of the night and 18-22 and right back to, all right, give them the benefit of the doubt for a night. You throw away Saturday, but now it's like this team's got to do something. I just don't feel like they can wait around if they're going to determine that they want to try and salvage the season.
Yeah, and look, this isn't to go in on the veterans and start just ragging on Steph and Klay and Draymond and everybody else, but we also got to be realistic and understand it's 2024 and not 2017 anymore. And we can't have expectations as people watching the Warriors that that Trace Jackson Davis and Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Pajemski are going to play near flawless basketball down the stretch and be closers. We've gotten all 3 sides of the triangle on this road trip, which was, we see what the team looks like when Kuminga and Wiggins play great, and they're even able to play together. And
they're getting a little bit, and they're getting a little better playing together. I think the last few games, like I don't feel like that was damning, that like any damning minutes there. We saw Kuminga play a little bit of 3 tonight with some Asaric at the 4, and like that wasn't damning, but yeah, it just doesn't all add up.
No, and that's where I'm going with it is like, can't have the expectations of these young guys to go and do it. Then you see the second side of the triangle, which is in Milwaukee, of like, oh, wow, they really outperformed expectations and they played really hard. And Pajemski had a great homecoming moment, but ultimately they didn't have their best player who they're heavily reliant on. And they lose to Giannis, Damian Lillard, and Chris Middleton, who know how to close down the stretch. And then you get this game, which is just kind of the opposite of any positive effects you would have taken from the first 2. And you got to look at your Stephen Curry's, Draymond Green's, Klay Thompson's. I think Draymond was fine tonight. I think Wiggins was fine. I think Kuminga was fine. I think his stats are probably going to look better than it was, but we don't need to get into the whole Kuminga rant.
All of them except his plus minus, but go ahead.
Steph cannot be turning the ball over like that. Klay needs to take more than 10 shots, and 1 for 4 from 3 isn't going to cut it. And look, Dario Saric getting double teamed because he was the offensive engine at one point in the second half. Didn't have that one on my bingo card.
No, they were trying to take shooters away. I think that what the Grizzlies were trying to take shooters away in this game. And, Saric was hitting a couple, so they tried to take the ball out of his hand. Like they were fine with Kuminga attacking the basket. They were going to let him shoot threes. They were going to let Wiggins shoot threes. They were going to let Draymond shoot threes, and then they were going to try and make life difficult on Steph and Klay and Saric. But Saric was the one that was hotter than all of them, and so they tried to take the ball out of his hands once he got rolling a little bit. But no, I mean, it's just as bad as it gets for the Warriors right now. And again, I think it's the kind of loss that leads you to, like, where are the answers? Like, what is the answer at this point? Because again, Wiggins it always comes back. Like, to me, it's Steph with the turnover. Like, why did the Warriors lose this game? It's Steph with the turnovers, even though he had 26. It's Klay was two-way bad tonight. And again, I'm with you on Wiggins and Kuminga. I think Wiggins and Kuminga basically played the same game. They were both about 7 of 13, 7 of 14 until the end. Kuminga padded his numbers a little bit there at the end with a couple of buckets when the game was over. Didn't make threes. 1 of 5 for Kuminga, 1 of 3 from Wiggins. Kuminga rebounded well, that he was active, but Kuminga had turnover problems and Wiggins didn't rebound. And so they both end up in that 16 to 20 point range, but not having it be nearly enough to impact a win, because those are your second leading scorers and third leading scorers in this one. And it's just, certain groups work, other groups don't. It just feels like a back to the drawing board type of situation, unfortunately, for Steve Kerr right now, because I think he wanted to give that group that he started the game on Friday night another opportunity in this game. I think he was thinking if all things went relatively well, they would win this game, and then it makes it an easy decision to continue forward on Wednesday because you're starting to build a little bit of momentum. Now I think you got to wonder where you go as far as, now making more lineup changes, and Draymond's going to be back in the fold and only played 23 minutes in this game. And as the games go on, he'll be able to play a few more minutes. But it's just a matter of Steve Kerr trying not to have to be searching as much as he has, but now still has to, but now it's back to the drawing. He has to it's right back into the mode that he didn't want to be in.
Well, I want to ask you a couple of questions, JD, because I want to try to keep this show as productive as possible, given what a catastrophe that was.
And we'll get to the YouTube chat. I'm going to answer your questions. We'll get to the YouTube chat. I've also got some numbers. I know everybody, Greg, is complaining about the free throw disparity. So I've got some numbers on the free throw disparity. To be honest, I don't think the Warriors got hosed tonight, but any way, shape, or form at the free throw line. I thought the Grizzlies were more aggressive in attacking and getting to the bucket. I didn't think the Warriors really did in this one tonight. I didn't think the Warriors were getting fouled constantly and not getting calls in this game. So we will get into that coming up as well. And again, there are some numbers on the disparity because the Warriors shot 10 free throws tonight. The Grizzlies shot 40 free throws tonight. The Grizzlies had a plus 23 in terms of points at the free throw line. The Grizzlies also were a plus 30. They made 10 more threes than the Warriors did. That right there, along with the turnovers, wound up being the difference in the game. But give me your questions, and then we'll get to the YouTube chat and then have some more numbers for you.
Yeah, and thank you to all the YouTubers, by the way. I see we're over 200, which is awesome for a just online show, and we got a lot of regulars and some new names I'm seeing too, so we're going to get to you in just a bit. The Warriors, people love to play the trade game, and what kind of drives me crazy about it is it's really easy to just say trade X without kind of considering all the little variables and maybe the ways that the Warriors hurt themselves. They handed out 3 contracts in the last couple of years that are not looking amazing. The Jordan Poole contract, which if your name is Washington Wizards, you'll somehow take it.
They lost at home to Detroit today, by the way. The Wizards had a nice MLK day where they lost at home to Detroit. Yikes. Yeah. Anyway,
all right. So for Marvin Bagley and all those guys that got traded from Detroit to Washington.
So Poole contract is one.
The Wiggins contract is another, and I totally understand why they did it, and I fully support the fact that it happened at the time because he was kind of supposed to be the bridge to continuing the dynasty as a great two-way player, but he's not performing up to his expectations. And then the third one is Draymond Green, which isn't necessarily going to be a horrific contract, but right now he's in the first year of that 4-year, $100 million deal, and he's missed 21 games to suspension alone. So the Warriors have made 3 decisions that have partially put them in this position. So you can sit here and play let's trade this person, let's trade that person. Oh, I want to fix this. At some point, when you create enough of a mess for yourself, I don't know, like, how many different paths you can take, and that's where I want to kind of hand it off to you, JD.
Well, none of them look good right now. I think, Draymond is the one. I mean, to me, the one that's was the worst was probably Pools, and they got off of that one. I think the Draymond one has the potential to not look great, but it really doesn't look great the most to this point, just based on Draymond's lack of availability. I think Draymond's still, at least to this point, a productive player when he is on the floor. And the Wiggins one, with the contract going down over time, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think anybody could have possibly imagined that Andrew Wiggins would be as bad as Andrew Wiggins has been. You could have foreseen a slight decline, but the decline that Andrew Wiggins has had is something that I think is pretty hard to foresee after the Warriors sent him to that deal. So, none of them look good at this point for varying reasons. Again, I've said it. I understand why the Warriors would be looking to try to maybe get off of Wiggins and that deal to get their financial house in order. It would not surprise me if the Warriors were calling around just to see if anybody would be willing to do. If you're going to go the nuclear option, then you do have to call on Draymond and you do have to call on Klay. If you're going to go to the nuclear option, which I don't necessarily, we're going to find out here in a couple of weeks if the Warriors want to go full blown nuclear option or not, Craig. But at least gauging, would somebody take it on if the Warriors want to go full dump mode? I don't think anybody in the league would be really willing to take on Draymond with this year plus 3 remaining on his deal. And, so then it becomes, is this season worth salvaging? And then you have to give up other players they're just in a tough spot, because at some point, the guys that you plan to count on, you have to be able to count on. And I think that's been, tonight we're talking about Klay Thompson. Tonight tonight maybe we're not talking about Wiggins, but we're talking about Klay Thompson tonight. He's also somebody that the Warriors are meant to count on. We're talking about Stephen Curry. We're talking about, I think, disconnected, jumbled lineups that lead to a lot of miscues and lack of communication and things that need to be sorted out. If this team's going to, move forward and try to salvage this season from 12th now in the Western Conference. I mean, that's the other part of this thing. I mean, it's only the Grizzlies, Blazers, and Spurs that are worse than the Warriors right now in the Western Conference. The Lakers are ahead of them, although still on the outside looking in, and Utah is now among the group that's in as far as the teams that would be in the play-in tournament. So they're up against it. And they have to decide whether they want to bite the bullet, do a mini sell to get their financial house in order, or look to give up young talent to try and bring somebody back that you can put with Steph and maybe complements the veteran core to try to go all in on the next, let's say, 2 years, the rest of this year plus 2 years. And then you see where you're at that point in the summer of maybe 2026, if you have to do something a little bit more drastic.
Well, I got one for you from the YouTube chat as a good segue to get into that. And this one comes from Douglas Mikes, one of our regulars. What's up, Douglas Mikes? No team is trading anything with the Warriors until the last day. They know the Warriors will get more desperate. And I can't say that's a terrible observation, because today's a lot worse than Friday was.
You'd think. I mean, you would really think. Absolutely. I mean, if I'm a team that, let's just use Toronto as an example. I'm just using Toronto as an example. Let's say Jonathan Kuminga is a player that the Raptors covet, would want for Siakam. If the Raptors are saying to the Warriors, you have to give us Kuminga or you're not getting Siakam, and the Warriors are like, nah, we don't want to do that. We like his upside, talented young kid. We think he's going to get better. We're not doing Kuminga for Siakam. Even if we think Siakam will come back and re-sign next year and be a Warrior for the next few years. Okay, so you end up at a stalemate there. Toronto or the Warriors then come back and say, we would do Wiggins and 2 of our other young players. If you'll take Wiggins, 2 of the other young players that aren't Kuminga, And then Toronto will say, well, no, we're not going to do that. We want Kuminga to be part of that. We don't think that the rest of these, or we've got a deal somewhere else that we can go to. So you end up at this stalemate and nobody's going to budge. And I think Douglas Mikes is spot on. It becomes who's going to blink first. Is it Toronto not having a better offer than Wiggins and Moody? Again, hypothetically speaking, not saying I would do that deal. Wiggins, Moody, and Pajemski, or Wiggins, Moody, and TJD, or whatever it is. I'm just throwing names out there. Do you get to a point where Toronto's like, all right, that deal's better than anything we have from Indiana. Sacramento's out. Atlanta's not giving us. Oh, okay, we'll do it. Or does Toronto control the room and get down and they're like, hey, Warriors, like Siakam is yours if you give us Kuminga, but you got to give us Kuminga. And it gets down to the end and the Warriors think that Siakam could really help and they want to risk it. So, I mean, I think that's the stalemate as far as the way things, end up going.
Yeah.
You want to get to some more on the YouTube chat?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to read some you liked at the top and I'll put them up?
Yeah, I'm kind of scrolling through here and we can be quick on a few of these. Hello There is one of our favorites. Curry taking a nap. Curry didn't have a lot of urgency in this game. He really didn't. I mean, I thought first half he was scoring. But the mindless turnovers, the unforced turnovers are just freaking killers. And then the foul trouble was a big part of the problem in this game. And, it just, again, I hate to go down the road of like kind of crushing Curry because Curry scored 26 points and there've been a lot of nights where he's the only guy. And even tonight at times he was the only guy, but it just goes to show the margin for error, I think, for this team. The fact that Curry has to not only score, but he has to play well. He can't have a bunch of mistakes either, or this team's kind of wrecked. Hello There also added Dubs outplayed by a Grizzlies G League team. Not good. Not good at all. Embarrassing. San Jose Jazz fan the third. Very disappointing. Mrs. Jazz fan chimed in and said, very disappointing, very upsetting. Yeah, this is the kind of game that sends everybody right back to where they were going into Friday's game and coming off of the Toronto game and off of the New Orleans game, where it's like wholesale changes need to happen. This team looks completely lost. It has to be, big things have to be flipped upside down. Regulator, another national TV game letdown. Yeah, the Warriors have had a propensity of that for, of late. When you look at some of the national TV games, they did beat Boston right before Christmas, but really Denver was a nationally televised game. The two Denver games, the loss on Christmas and then the Denver game there, and then this one back on TNT. Is there one I'm forgetting? It feels like there's one I'm forgetting here of late that was also
They're all blending into me.
They are. Yeah, they are. Rebel to Sounds. The Warriors were never going to win this game. It sure didn't think that way. It sure didn't look that way to me. I mean, I thought they had a great, they're right there, fourth quarter, good fourth quarter. Steph gets going, ball movement's there, cut down on the turnovers, defend the three a little bit better, and watch a young Grizzlies team that had a lot of two-way and G League guys out on the floor crumble down the stretch. And again, it didn't have to be pretty. Like we've seen this Warriors team, it didn't have to be pretty. To you just win and move on to the next and try to build some momentum. But again, now it's back to the drawing board in a very bad way. This is like the Miami game. Rebel to Sounds adds there. The Miami game, the Warriors never had it. Tonight, I felt like they had it. Like tonight, and not had it like they were like the game was over, but I felt like they were locked in and competitive and that. So yeah, just a horrible loss. Drew Down chiming in, Enrique Rivera. Wow, this team is worse than I thought. The pieces just don't connect. Rebel to Sounds again with another good comment. Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams outplayed Pajemski, Kuminga, and Trace Jackson Davis. Yeah, I mean, I think they were all more impactful than those three. And, I think the Warriors are relying on for all of the discussion about the young players and their impact the Warriors are relying on a lot of young players right now. Like they are, and that's part of, again, maybe not the headliner.
Unfairly so.
Yeah, maybe it's not the headlining part to this game. Turnovers, bad defense, free throw disparity. Those things are the headliners, Greg. But the more you have to rely on these young players, the more these young players get exposed for not being bad players, but also not being able to help you win games as much as you really think.
Yeah, and again, we can't fall into the trap of just expecting the young players to be flawless, which this team isn't that good. And so therefore, the expectation for the young players to play above what they probably should as rookies in terms of making mistakes, just to win games, is kind of tough for them. And like one sequence that I wrote down, because I wouldn't say it as the defining sequence of the game. I mean, there was still a lot of basketball left to play, but Steph makes that three that rims up and out about 2 times and finally trickles in, puts the Warriors up 1 with about 10 and a half minutes left in the game. And then
91-90 at that point.
91-90, Podziemski got caught overextending on a closeout and fouled Luke Kennard for 3 free throws, makes them all. And then Steph Curry turns it over right after that. And again, that wasn't the moment when the game was lost from them. I think Kuminga got an and one to put it back to within 1 point. But it was just self-inflicted wounds and not being able to take advantage of leads and building on it. And Grizzlies making threes, sure. A lot of good players in the NBA. Perimeter defense could have been much, much better. But the unnecessary fouls, the ridiculous turnovers down the stretch from the guys that were playing well offensively, like your Sariches and your Currys, at least through the first half. I mean, it really just shot them in the foot. And another chat that stuck out to me, I think it was Douglas Mikes again, was talking about the disconnect between vets and young players. I mean, JD, where are we at with this? Because I don't think the vets do really trust the young players, even if they may like them.
Yeah, they don't. I don't think it's personal, but they don't. They don't trust them. And again, that is why the Warriors constantly find themselves in the position of not having enough in a bunch of different ways every single night. Like you can look at the same free throws, fouling, turnover, like those things typically are the same, but it's different. It's a different combination or a different player that failed them on a different night. So they just can't get any level of consistency. Now, maybe if the veteran players were more consistent, the younger players could fall in line off of that, which is what happened in Chicago. Like that is the one thing that was different. It was, hey, no turnovers, right? They had the franchise record for turnovers, 5 turnovers for the game. Steph and Klay were awesome, hit threes. And then Wiggins was really good. And so was Kuminga, right? And so like you got other contributions from, Trace Jackson Davis here, Podziemski there. And now you still needed a hell of a fourth quarter from Steph after you needed a hell of a third quarter from Klay to win the game, which I think that's also telling. And we talked about it Friday. Like that's also really telling that you can play that well. And on those nights, you're still, you feel like you need to hit every shot down the stretch to win. So I think
don't forget, Klay was making a lot of clutch shots in the fourth too. I know he had a great third, but it was Steph and Klay.
It was
really kind of lifting that together.
So you needed both of those playing well, plus Wiggins, plus Kuminga, right? So it was basically the 4 of them to get, and then Trace Jackson Davis, I think, had double digits on 5 of 6 or 5 of 7 in the game, around the rim, obviously. So yeah, it just goes to show, like, to me, this team has to do something if they want to salvage the season, they have to have a higher end talent that allows higher end talent is what changes your margin for error. And so like, to me, they don't have, it goes back to at the foundation that they don't have a number 2 because Klay has not that. And Wiggins has not been that. I think Kuminga would love to be that, but I think in him trying to do that, it throws everything else out of whack too. Because I also, you talk about Klay Thompson's shots, and Klay did not play well. But anytime I look at, well, Steph should have had more shots or Klay should have had more shots. I mean, Steph took 20 shots tonight. But anytime I think Kuminga took 18 shots, like Kuminga is not shy. And so if you want, Like, he provides an element that the Warriors need, right? At the rim and getting to the bucket and all of that. But he basically, like, he's like a different, he's the sixth, like, he is I'm trying to be nice about it, but I'm pausing here. He basically is a Jamal Crawford or a Jordan Clarkson, not positionally. He's obviously a big wing, but like, he basically gets the ball and he's looking to score. And so he's kind of a black hole, honestly. And at times it's fine. You need it. The Warriors are, when he's scoring it, but the flow of keeping everybody else involved, I do think it's broken up by the fact that he is so eager and willing and confident in his own offensive ability. So even, I guess what I'm saying is, even when he's good, sometimes it throws other things out of whack, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I wish we had our little Bob Myers and it's exhausting sound drop for me to hit, because would have done that a few times already tonight. I'm not going to go deep into the G word, and I don't know if it was even necessarily that. But just disappointing, man. Just real disappointing. And
what's the G word? I miss, and what am I missing?
Ends in a less.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, the fourth quarter, maybe. Gosh. Yeah, I didn't even think gutless tonight. I really didn't. But the fourth quarter, now that you think about it, was like, I thought they showed, you knew the Grizzlies were going to play hard. Yeah. And so I thought the Warriors were playing hard. It's just the first sign of things start to go awry. And the Warriors just kind of, all right, that's it. Not our night. I mean, it happened to be the fourth quarter in the game tonight, but there's been other times in different games. Klay was jacking up bad shots. I'm going back to Enrique Rivera. Klay non-existent in this game. The 19 turnovers from Regulator. Memphis did shoot 40 free throws, so we can get into that. And are maybe a pseudo fun with numbers here, but I do have a list of a bunch of different things as the Warriors now fall to 1-2 in their current 4-game road trip. And Greg, feel free to jump in on any of these. With the finale will be the halfway mark of the season at Utah on Wednesday. Grizzlies get the win against the Warriors. I wanted to get into, here was the one about the free throws. So it has happened the last few instances, this via Elias, of the Warriors having a plus 30 free throw disparity in one of their games. Today in Memphis, it happened at the beginning of last season in Orlando. The Warriors had 15 free throws. The Magic had 46. The game against the Lakers at the end of last year, the Lakers had 50, the Warriors had 16. Also in, let's see, 2000, you got to go back to 2012, Orlando. Remember there was a Dwight Howard game where he shot 1,000,000 free throws. They had 55-19 there. So it has been, even in recent memory, and there was another game in 2011 where Miami had 47 and the Warriors had 16. That was going back to the Wade, LeBron, Bosh Miami team. So it has been rare, but yeah, that was, one of, I guess, a couple of times that's happened in the last decade, basically, where the Warriors were a minus 30 at the free throw. A lot of people were complaining about that tonight. I think it was more about the turnovers, really, than it was the free throw disparity. And it was another night where the Warriors allowed a team to get hot from three that doesn't typically shoot the three ball well. And it winds up Greg doing them in. Yeah.
Well, just one thing I've been looking at while you were going into the free throws and the threes, I'm actually looking at all the shot charts, because I know we were texting a little bit back and forth. Players that made multiple shots outside of the key. Do you want to take a guess at who I found so far?
Wait, now say that again, because I want to make sure I get it right.
Players who converted on multiple shots taken from outside the key.
Okay, multiple shots from outside the key.
Yes.
On the Warriors.
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
I mean, Kuminga did. I think he had at least two,
Nope.
right?
One.
He didn't. I thought he hit a pull-up jumper from the baseline. Did that not get counted? No. Okay.
Not on the chart. No, just
Okay.
1-3.
All right. Saric would be the other one. And what?
I think
maybe Wiggins. Maybe Wiggins hit a jumper, or did he not hit a jumper either?
He hit 1-3 from the right wing.
But he didn't hit any. He didn't hit any twos outside of the key.
Nope.
Well, Warriors did have a huge advantage in the paint, and I think that's the debate as to why people were pissed about the free throw disparity, because the Warriors outscored the Grizzlies 62-20 in the paint, but only got 10 free throws. But again, I always try to live in, like, I don't look at the numbers independent of the game that I just watched. And I'll be honest with you, the game that I just watched, it didn't seem like, oh, there's that layup or bucket and one, and there should have been a foul, and there was. I mean, there were a lot of wide open layups and dunks that the Warriors got tonight.
Yeah, there were. And I think the Grizzlies honestly missed a lot of inside shots that many teams would have hit. So kept them hanging around. To finish my answer so I don't leave everyone hanging.
Let's do it.
Klay had a 3, and he had a mid-range shot on the right wing.
Okay.
Draymond Green had 2 jumpers. And yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, he hit the 1-3 and another one. Yeah. Okay. Well, so what's your takeaway from that? They just didn't shoot. They just didn't shoot well enough outside the paint.
Yeah, and they're not a points in the paint team either. So I think they're
very
heavily reliant on perimeter play, and they can't even get that on many nights. If you don't have Steph and Klay shooting, and this can go back to the Kuminga playing the 3 conversation. Part of the reason I believe the Warriors don't want to do that is because you can have Saric be the 4 because he's been making 3s. But if it's Draymond or Looney at the center, I mean, you got to have a good version of Klay Thompson out there to even possibly justify that, right?
Yeah, I think you do. And I was jotting down some numbers here because I wanted to break this down in a little bit of a different way. So the Warriors for the night were 44 of 90. And you had the numbers. They were 31 of 51 in the paint. So that means they would have been 13 of 39. So that's easy math, 33%. 13 of 39 outside of the paint. So in the paint, the Warriors were 60%, which is awesome, 31 of 51, 62 points, 61% shooting. Outside of the paint, 13 of 39. So that's 3s and just any other 2s that aren't in the paint. And to extrapolate out of that, they were 10 of 31 from 3. So they were basically 3 for 8 on 2s outside of the paint. Only 11 or only 8 shots taken among 2s that weren't in the paint. Obviously, everybody wants to shoot a 3 now or have a shot in the paint because of the analytics of that. So those are going to be the fewest amount of shots anyway. But yeah, Warriors didn't hit 3s tonight, which has been something, to boil it down. When they don't make 3s, they're vulnerable. And I think the Grizzlies believe that. And that's where the Grizzlies were trying to either take away and or make the 3 ball a lot more difficult for the Warriors, Greg.
Yeah, and Grizzlies kind of made them pay in every way possible, and I think it's easier for teams to defend the Warriors on the perimeter when it's like, hey, let's just make life for Steph and Curry as uncomfortable as possible, and then you're forcing Klay Thompson to have a good night. And even if that's the case, then it's like, okay, well, he's probably got to sustain that for the better part of 4 quarters. And then you got to get another source, whether that's Draymond Green hitting the couple when they leave him wide open, Jonathan Kuminga making the ones he chooses to take. Andrew Wiggins' shot has been invisible.
What do you think of the Kuminga 3s, the ones he took? Because I think I had the shot chart. It was early in the game, but he was 3 for 6, and he basically had 2 layups, a dunk, and then missed 2 wing 3s and a corner 3. He ended up 1 of 5 from 3. I think his shot chart is always fun to look at, and I'm actually going to bring his up. He was 8 of 12 in the paint, and he was 8 of 12 in the paint. And what does that make him? 1 of 6 on everything else. So
yeah, and I'm not going to say Kuminga can't shoot threes ever, because sometimes they're wide open and I'm cool with him taking them. We've talked about this before. I like the corner threes as a shot for him more than the ones on the wing, especially when I look at those shot charts. But where Jonathan Kuminga is his best is being able to go one-on-one ISO with somebody in the paint and win with his athleticism. And to his credit, he has done a really good job of that this year with the opportunities he's been given. I just think that when Kuminga's trying to chuck it from outside a little bit more or be the singular source of offense in an early fourth quarter, that's kind of a burden on him that's not even really fair for him. And like, this isn't so much about what we think of Kuminga or what should he do. It's more, that's not what his natural game is to be like, oh, I'm just going to score it all 3 layers all the time and take every shot. I love when he gets in the paint and gets to go downhill. He's not a player that is meant to be taking multiple outside shots down a stretch in a game that's tight, which it seems like every Warrior game is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, I think it also comes back to even the games where he plays well. It's a scenario where he's willing, like he's confident, and I think that's where there is that little bit of a disconnect between. I think the Warriors would have loved for him to be, and I'm looking what he ended up for the game. I think that the 9 of 18. I think the Warriors would have loved that to have been 9 of 13. You know what I mean, or 8 or 9 of 12, and have 5 or 6 of those shots go to somebody else, maybe in the rhythm of the offense. And so while he's playing well, it does, I think he plays well in a way to where the Warriors can't always bottle it up. And I'm not saying that's even his fault. It's not his fault. The Warriors can't bottle up the good and make it work on other nights with the rest of basically what they want to accomplish. We got a couple fire Kerrs. Drew down. Steph's got to take better care of the basketball. Yes, he does. Phil Alper, Warriors are hot garbage. Spencer Alsey, Warriors are god-awful. Enrique Rivera, one of our friends, Warriors are bad, hands down. No doubt. It's yuck. It was yuck. And Klay was terrible tonight. Drew down, I think, with a good point here on Kuminga. Kuminga had open looks, but don't want him settling. He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on drives either. Kuminga gets fouled a lot and gets calls. I think Kuminga maybe gets the best whistle on the team, believe it or not.
I also think he attacks the best on the team.
Yeah, and you're right.
Sure.
He attacks without giving a damn if he's going to get fouled or not,
that's
or whether
my favorite part of his game.
Or
to be honest.
or whether he's going to get blocked or not. Like sometimes the guy will throw his stuff. Tonight that happened on a play, but he's not afraid to go in there and you have to attack it as if you don't care if you get fouled or blocked. And you're 100% correct. That's one thing Kuminga always does. Carrison, Aaron, this team is cooked. They're just a mediocre team. Mediocre teams are inconsistent.
Not mediocre tonight.
Clank Thompson, worse than mediocre tonight. Clank Thompson has joined the chat and has joined. That's a new Twitter follow. I don't know if he's following you as well, Greg, but he's followed me. A little Klay Thompson parody. It's simple. I need to get more shots up. The Klay Thompson parody for the Warriors. Also, our buddy Carrison, JD, how many times are we going to say this is the worst loss of the season? It's got to be at least 5. I mean, it's been 3 here in the last week. I mean, we're not even. I guess technically this is Monday again, so it's been 3 in the last 9 days. If you want to go back to the Toronto game, I mean, the Toronto game, I think qualified. I think the Pelicans game qualified. The game tonight most definitely qualifies, and the Denver game qualifies. So I think we're talking about 4 in, I guess that would be the last 11 or 12 days. 4 in the last 11 or 12 days that are all in the running at this point. for worst loss of the year. We got people asking what impact player wants to come here, JD. Well, that is something you have to ask yourself, I think, if you look at the Siakam. That's a fair question on Siakam, because we can talk about whether Siakam could help him and who you would give up or who you wouldn't give up, Greg. But you do have to allow for the fact that Siakam, in addition to the Warriors giving him a max deal, and here's the other part of that. If the Warriors are going to go Siakam on a max deal, then they're probably going to have to trade somebody else. Like Siakam on a max deal, they're going to have to get their financial house in order in a different way. So Siakam on a max deal may mean they have to make another trade involving Wiggins this offseason, or Klay Thompson just doesn't come back and they don't really replace him, or they replace him with a veteran minimum kind of a player. So I think, those are all things that have to be accounted for, even if you look at trying to get Siakam. But it's also the value of, does Siakam think that the next 2 years, let's say, of the 4 years he would be signing for after this year, that the Warriors provide him with the opportunities that he wants to be able to win? He turned down Sacramento, and the future does appear bright for them. Smaller market, different scenario there. So I don't know. Maybe it's more about wanting to play with Steph and the belief in what the Warriors have been over the last decade and their ability to quickly turn it again.
I mean, wanting to play with Steph is the only thing. I think I truly believe that is the only positive facet that can lure a decent or pretty good or all-star level player to come and play in Golden State. Because yes, he's hit a bit of a wall lately. Tonight, he was very frustrating with the turnovers. He's still one of the top players in the world, if we're all going to be real with ourselves. But this team collectively is not even close. So playing with Steph Curry is about the only thing that this front office or this roster can hold on to as a positive sign to bring somebody over and try to keep this thing going a little bit longer.
Yeah. And again, that's what the Warriors are going to have to determine, is how much that's going to be worth trying to chase at this point. Like, do the Warriors want to chase that? And, because we're right back to the drawing board of something dramatic has to happen. Like, forget it. Like, it felt, I said Friday felt like the last stand. But when you lose the game tonight, it completely erases. I mean, Friday was the outlier, basically. Saturday you throw away, but Friday now is the outlier, because unfortunately for the Warriors, this game and tonight is very much in line with the way, the bad of, like we were just talking about, the Torontos and the Pelicans and the Denvers. And now the Warriors have to figure out where they proceed from here. The Grizzlies shot 37% from the field, 37.2. Get this, a little fun with numbers here to close it out. 37.2% from the field, which is a season low field goal percentage for a Warriors opponent. So they shot 37.2, but they also made 23s, which is the most allowed by a Warriors opponent this season. So the Warriors, on the night where they had, tell me one stat that's not indicative of the season that the Warriors have had. They had their best field goal percentage defended tonight, but the opponent made the most threes that any opponents made against them on the same night. And so it basically cancels out. And then, of course, the 32 free throws, which is a plus 23 in terms of points. They shot 40, they made 32 free throws, and a plus 30 in terms of attempts, a plus 23 at the line. So plus 23 for the Grizzlies at the line, plus 30 from the 3-point line. So plus 53 there. That negated the Warriors, who were a plus 42 at points in the paint. And so that it ended up oversetting it. The season low for the Warriors in free throw attempts, 10 tonight. Draymond back after missing 16. Warriors went 8-8 in the 16. I thought Draymond looked pretty good. My number one note here as we kind of wrap things up on a Monday here for KNBR, the sports leader on YouTube and Twitch. My number one note was all eyes on Draymond as he makes his return, comes off the bench. I thought there were two instances where he came in the game off the bench, beginning of the first, beginning of the third, where he he and others completely changed the game. But you're right. The result, and you've said it a couple of different times, the result of the game shows you that Draymond he's not a cure-all, and the Warriors cannot count on him being a cure-all at any point here moving forward.
No, not at all. And today is not a day to mince words about the Warriors. So when I'm seeing all the comments in the chat, if you want to let it out, hey, this is the space to do it. Speaking of Draymond, I'll share a quote with you because, we can't do our traditional Sounds of Silver.
Sure. No, let's
Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Until every guy takes pride in themselves and wants to stop the guy in front of him, we'll suck. Quote, Draymond Green.
Wait, say that again? I gotta run that through. I gotta run that back again.
Until every guy takes pride in themselves and wants to stop the guy in front of him,
okay,
we'll suck.
So basically, he wasn't putting it on him tonight. He was basically saying, hey, the point of attack defense is so terrible that none of the rest of it even mattered.
But you know what? Tonight's a night where I'm okay with him just kind of making a statement like that and not saying it's all on me, because it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I agree. Did he do enough? No, but he only played, 24 minutes. So, I thought Draymond played fine. It was sort of all right, a couple of positive stretches for Draymond, but everything else around him was pretty terrible on the whole. And so what do you think as far as the lineup moves moving forward here? I'll just say this. I like Draymond and Kuminga together, 5 and 4. Draymond at the 5, Kuminga at the 4. I think Looney, it's so tough. It's just so tough because let's say you want to get Draymond and Kuminga in there. Well, then who's your 3? Does that mean that you have to put Wiggins back on the bench? Or would you start Draymond, Kuminga, and Wiggins, and then you have 3 guys that basically are non-shooters? And you have to start Steph and Klay, or if you do that, you got to take, and then if you don't want to have the 3, but you want Draymond and Kuminga together, you got to take Wiggins out, and then you got to put Podziemski maybe in, and then, or I guess you could go Saric as well. You could keep Saric in, but then you're playing Kuminga at the 3, which it's just, again, as I talk my way through it, it just, another example of how it just doesn't fit together seamlessly enough to make it easy. Like the Warriors need easy choices.
Yeah, and as you're kind of going through that answer, I'm glad you end with that, because the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't really know, and I don't want to have such a cop-out answer to an important question, but that is the challenge Steve Kerr has had on him this whole season. And this isn't to talk about the performance of Steve Kerr and, oh, no, it's not his fault, or, oh, he should be fired. Like, let that out in the chat. Do whatever you got to do. The reality is, it's like what you said, I think it was on Just Dubs on Saturday, which is, it's just exhausting when it's a revolving door of, well, we have all these guys that can play nice, and we haven't really been playing Moses Moody. Well, let's put him out there. Oh, and he actually played good, so maybe we should play him more, and then we take minutes away from somebody else, but now we're playing Moody more, and he's not doing well, and Wiggins stinks, so we're going to put him on the bench, but then off the bench, he's been so good and not turning it over, and now we're going to give Wiggins more chance, and then he can't do it, so I don't even know what fits together at all in anything.
Yeah, that's the conundrum. And yet the Warriors came into this season believing they had a much deeper team this year than last year, and that they had a better combination of young and old from last year to this year, as far as the pieces being able to fit together on both of those fronts. And I think the thing that we're finding now with them 18 and 22, and again, 18 and 22 with Steph having only missed 3 games, 2 due to injury in the 1 game that he rested. Steph missed 26 games last year. So this team's had more Steph. They've had more Klay, who isn't sitting back-to-backs. They've had Draymond's been in and out of his own doing. Ernie Chavez, you put it up on the screen. There's too many mediocre and that is really what it is. And Enrique Rivera, Podziemski took some questionable shots. What's up with the Kareem skyhook attempt? That's true. I think part of, though, when you are comfortable playing the young players and because you feel they've earned minutes, and I think this goes for Podziemski, it goes for Trace, goes for Kuminga, it goes for everybody. When the young players play well enough to get out there more, hey, we're going to play these guys more. Well, the more you play them, the more they're going to make mistakes because they still are young players. Like, they're not made dudes. So, like, if you tell Podziemski he's going to be a 30-minute or a 25-minute a game player, like, he's going to at times play like a rookie. And so, Kuminga, it's the same thing. Like, Kuminga, I thought, took some bad shots tonight because he was feeling good about his game and feeling good about himself. He gets to the bucket a couple times. He makes 1 3. He wants to take another 3. They're leaving him open. He's like, forget that. I'm making that shot. And again, that can lead to struggles or guys maybe not playing their best game. And so I think, again, it all is part of the conundrum. Need the Rock. Please, you must be new here, Need the Rock. I know you said we've got our regulars and we got some newbies. Please speak on trading Kuminga due to struggling with everything but driving to the hoop. And then it says Pascal, so I think it's on Siakam. You must be new here. That is the conundrum for the Warriors. That is one of many. I agree with everybody saying in the chat. Podziemski had a tough game. Rashad Akil, 49ers. The Warriors will be just like the Giants back in the day. Skip 1 year and then go back. Skip another year and then go back. Well, usually once you go the wrong way in the NBA, that's night time. And it's hard to get back. But there is a little bit of a Giants-y feel to it. I'm not going to lie. A San Francisco Giants-y feel too. Hey, they went all in on the guys that brought them rings, and then it came a point where those guys just weren't good enough to carry the ship. And oh, by the way, the young players aren't quite able to carry it either. They are productive to varying degrees, but because that's the other part of this, and this is no young player's fault. No, Greg, it's not a young player's fault, but nope. But none of the young players are carriers. None of them are. Like, if there was a young guy that was like, oh, damn, this guy is the second best player. Like, this guy is taking somebody's spot. Like, no doubt better than X, but not just a little bit. Like, think Draymond when he took David Lee's spot back in the day. That kind of thing. Think Klay Thompson when he was a better fit around Steph Curry than Monte Ellis was. And so they made the decision to move Klay to being a starter basically after that halfway through his rookie year, and they shut Steph down and the two played together the next year and the Splash Brothers were born. Like, think no-brainers, right? Like, Klay Thompson was a better player than Monte Ellis by his second year in the league. I mean, like, he really was. And the Warriors were a playoff team with him and Steph leading the way. And then Draymond became better than David Lee. And it just, like, the guys that have it for the most part, and Curry may be an example on the other end, but he entered a massively chaotic and dysfunctional situation. But typically the guys that are carriers as young players early, it happens fast. And so I don't
Jason Tatum was in his first year.
We've seen enough, I feel, and that doesn't mean that any of these guys are not going to be good players, but it's going to take a few more years, is what I'm saying. Like, if they were already going to be at that level, they would already be at that level, and now if they're going to get to that level, it's going to be, year 6. If any of these guys are, think De'Aaron Fox or think Curry, right? Like, most of the guys either get it or get it those first couple, or it's going to be year 5, year 6 when they explode on the scene.
It's not just that they're not carriers at this stage in their career, JD. I see it as they're not closers. Like, that's what I was talking about on the phone with my brother yesterday.
It's a good way to say it. It's a better way to say it. I like that.
Because 2 games I'll point out are obviously the Bucks game on Saturday, and then how about the Steph sits out for the knee injury, and then Draymond and Klay are ejected in the first 2 minutes. And so all of a sudden you got Podziemski coming off the bench and having a great game against the Timberwolves. But it kind of comes down to it at the end, and it's like Chris Paul was really the only NBA veteran closer type of guy out there, and his role isn't to primarily score. And they crumbled against a team that has a guy like Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and guys that have done this longer. And take the Bucks. It's like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard, and Chris Middleton were all great in the fourth quarter when it counted. And it's not to say anything against when Brandon Podziemski has had awesome games or Trace Jackson Davis has been getting his double-doubles. They're just not at the point yet, and you can't really expect them to be, to go and close a game and know how to just get the job done and win it. Like, why do you think that nobody wants to play LeBron James in the playoffs, even if they think the Lakers aren't very good?
Yeah, it's the track record. He's an all-time great. It's the fact that he still has the ability in a short series with rest to dominate lengthy stretches. And so, yeah, I mean, nobody's going to – the Lakers are – ironically, they're in like the same position they were in last year where they're on the outside looking in. They need to make some moves, but nobody's going to want to play them if they get the moves right. Like I think the Warriors should look – not to get off on a little separate tangent, but – I think the Warriors should look to do what the Lakers did last year. Like try to, basically. It's like, hey, we go all in on the year and deal with the future. Like, to me, there shouldn't be this worry about 3 years from now because Steph, in theory, is still going to be around to bridge the next couple. And so you're still going to have Steph. Like at the point in which you really are going to have to rebuild, like that will be the point. Like that will coincide with Steph being gone or being like, but you don't have to worry about that now. So you don't have to worry about, I'm giving up a young player now because you're going to have another opportunity to tear it down the studs in 3 years, whether Joe Lacob wants to maybe admit that or accept that or not. Like, don't worry about, I'm giving up young talent to try and be a pretty good team the next 3 years. No, just be a pretty good team the next 3 years. Try to make a run with the guys that you know can make a run if things go right. And then your no-brainer tear it down to the studs moment is probably coming here in 26 or 27 at that point. And at that point, Steph is no longer going to be a carrier, at the level that he is even now. Yeah.
And I don't know if, everyone's going to have a different opinion on it of whether you should look at 26 and 27 or really look at 24 when you're got this trade deadline coming up. But the one thing that we're all going to agree on is moves will be made. They're going to try. They probably will have to get a deal that might not even be super even because of the way that they're desperate right now, like Douglas Mikes pointed out. I mean, that's a fair point.
At this point, I think it goes, I hate to say it, it goes all the way back to before the Chicago game, right? What happened the day between the Pelicans game and the Chicago game? The morning after, it was Shams saying everybody's available other than Curry. Yep. And so I think they're back to evaluating the whole, like, can they just do a completely new, and I don't think it's a teardown. I really don't. I think it's more of a retool, and that doesn't mean Draymond and Klay are going to be gone. But I do think they're looking at, you know what, if it takes trading 6 or 7 players and those 6 or 7 players help retool the thing maybe around Steph and Draymond moving forward, or Steph, Draymond, and Klay moving forward, if they're still intent on keeping Klay, then go that route. And if it takes you the remainder of this year to try and build some sort of chemistry or figure out what you have for that new group for next year, you can do it and then try to add, whether it's via other trades or, your mid-level / veteran minimum type free agents come summertime.
Yeah. Retooling is it's upon us, I suppose. I'm just reading some more of the chat. A couple people saying I hate the Dubs. Well, I love the Dubs, but I hate them today. It was a bad game, man. Not much positive I can say about that one. Mr.
Negative. Yeah, why don't you, Greg? Why don't you pick some ones that you want to get to here, and then we'll call it a night here as we get closer to 7. And I know everybody's wanting to watch the big second half of the Tampa Philly game with the Buccaneers. having the lead in that one. And that's obviously on KNBR on the radio side. So let's get to a few that you think are relevant here before we close things out. And we appreciate everybody, by the way, on YouTube and Twitch. A couple of these YouTube only shows will be back on the radio on Wednesday. Look for us right around 8:15, 8:30, as we will be on after the Warriors and the Jazz in Salt Lake City. And that will also be after the new Sports Phone KNBR program, which is going to be set to debut tomorrow on the Sports Leader. And we'll be doing a little face off with the host and all of that. So looking forward to it. But yeah, 8:15, 8:30 on KNBR and on YouTube and Twitch for after the ball game Wednesday. But yeah, go ahead, Greg. And I got a couple of little quickie notes here after we run through, but let's run through like 5 or 6, however many you want in the chat. We can both comment on them and then we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of scrubbing through it all. Got some funny ones talking about football a little bit. Man, we got a certain viewer that doesn't really like either of us. Thanks for listening though and hanging out.
You know what?
We appreciate that.
I want to address Drew Down because I don't know if he's talking to me or somebody else, because there was one that I saw from Drew Down early. I don't know how you come out of that saying Kuminga was bad. I don't think Kuminga was bad tonight. I don't think Kuminga was as good as maybe the stat sheet makes it look. I really don't. He ended up with 20? Did he end up with 20? I think he ended up with 20 at the end, right? Yeah, he ended up with 20, 9 of 18. I thought he had some bad turnovers. I thought he took some bad shots. He was 20 and 11. I mean, it was the 5th double-double of his career. I do not think he played bad tonight. I just want to make that clear. I don't think he played good necessarily either. Like, I think at times he played good. I think at times he was kind of So I think he had a very similar game to Wiggins, to be perfectly honest, who was 7 of 13 with 16 points, 5 boards, a couple of blocks. But no, I do not think Kuminga was bad.
We got from the land of Hella, Dubs fans are like Cowboys fans, delusional. Probably in a similar state of mind right now, a little bit. Well, you
don't sound delusional. I know you're a long time Dubs fan, but you don't sound delusional. You are on the younger end of the spectrum, but I'll say this, especially for the younger end of the spectrum, you don't seem delusional, Greg. I'll give you that.
Appreciate that. Yeah. The internet is really, I think it's the rise of the Warriors' success coinciding with the internet that has just created a very interesting pool of people out there. But it's not just in the Bay Area, by the way. I mean, that goes for many, many, many fan bases geographically. Yeah, I feel like there's only a couple of ways you can go when it gets to this point. It's tear it down to the studs, which they don't want to do because they still have Steph Curry, or it's trade Young for Young Prime. And the reality is the Warriors don't have a lot of great options right now. No.
They don't have a lot of great options. And so there were a few people also in the chat. The big gripe for Kuminga was too many threes. And I'm going to defend Kuminga on this. The Grizzlies were daring him to shoot threes, right? And so he'd been hot from 3 the last couple games. Now he'd been cold from 3, ice cold before that, but he'd been hot the last couple of games from 3. The Grizzlies are daring him to shoot. So he takes a wing 3 early, misses it. Okay, well, you don't want to put that in your pocket and not ever shoot it again because you still have been hot lately, right? At that point, it's 1 miss. So then he takes another wing 3, misses it. Takes a corner 3, misses it. Okay, to me, it's you got to give him you got to give a young player a little leeway, I think.
Yeah.
To me, it was more after the second wing 3, don't take any more wing 3s. That would kind of be my and the corner 3s I have no problem with. Like the corner 3s, I think a lot of times are shots created that must be taken. And so corner 3s I think are ones that he probably should take. But I also get the devil's advocate point, which is if the lane's there, take the lane and don't settle for the 3. It was as if Kuminga settled for the 3. I think some say. I also think though, the Grizzlies were daring him to shoot, but I think the other thing is the Grizzlies are also daring him to try to drive when they're daring him to shoot, if that makes sense, because that's where you've got the defense more ready to wall him off and try and make things more difficult. So I just don't think it's as easy as, hey, quit shooting threes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think that he shouldn't be shooting threes, especially when kind of needs some source of offense. I mean, Sarge can make them. Klay sometimes on nights. Curry's been not fully himself lately. I mean, to say that he shouldn't shoot threes is pretty ridiculous too. I agree with you that I love the aspect of his game when he can go straight up with any player in the league and the way he does it without fear. Because when he gets to the line, I mean, he's an okay free throw shooter. Sometimes he's 4 for 4. Sometimes he's 1 for 4. I think overall in the season, though, he's probably about 75%. I haven't checked that in a little bit, but I have no problem with Kuminga needing to develop his free throws and jumper a little bit more. I think he's got to take them in order to develop it and get better. I don't need to see him take necessarily 6 a game if he's not hitting, but I'm totally fine with him taking a few here and there, especially when especially when teams are kind of daring it like they were. I don't think he takes a lot of uncontested bad look threes in his defense. I just think he doesn't make a lot of typically open wide open shots.
It's the wing three. He likes the wing three, and I think he doesn't make it like he wants to hit that wing three. And to be honest, that's the next evolution of his game, is to be able to consider there's 2 things. There's really 3 things to where Kuminga goes next level. 1 is his handle's got to get better. 2, his 3 gets better. And then 3 is his team defense has to get better. Like those are the 3 things to where when you're looking for a jump, it's not just, he can score double figures 20 straight games. Like that's not, or, he's been averaging, and he has been averaging it's not just double figures. It's like 16 and a half, close to 17 points per game over the last 19 or 20. So he has been scoring the ball, but that's basically, in a lot of ways, that's all he's been doing. And so the next level up, if you're going to become a player that's a true building block, is to become a more well-rounded player. Not going to be still 21. He's young. There's time to figure that out. But I think that also gets to the other sort of thing that pops up on every one of these shows is I think there's in some ways there's too much being asked of Kuminga from the fan base to be kind of a savior at this point, which is frankly unfair to him. All right. Did you have a couple more in the chat?
No, that was really about it. I mean, I just wanted to say, on a kind of a rough basketball day, just to thank everyone for tuning in. We had great numbers throughout, and any topics that you want to hit us with as we kind of continue the sports phone show. I know you'll be doing some work with that at some point, JD. Any of the Dubs OT shows, and of course our Just Dubs, where it's going to be a little bit more broad scale, look at the week, a little bit more structured. Anything that you find really interesting, just find us both on social media, and we're always happy to engage. So thank you for tuning into the show. And I mean, go Dubs, because they need some help.
Yeah, no, they do. And look, it's not going to get any easier. It's not going to get any easier because the Jazz are hot and they've gotten themselves over 500. They beat the Lakers the other night. Like they're in much better shape than the Warriors are, and they got off to a brutal start to this season. All right, that'll do it for Greg Silver. I'm John Dickinson. We are back Wednesday for Dubs OT, and of course, join us each and every Saturday, including this Saturday, 10 a.m. until noon, with Just Dubs. Your phone calls, your texts, live in the YouTube chat, live on YouTube and Twitch as well, and on X. Love that. Appreciate everybody chiming in. Otis Bird. Thanks, JD. Greg, take care of everyone. Everybody can see those on the screen. I like the closing credits there, Greg. Matt, you're a master. You're a master of the comments as we continue to. And hey, by the way, there is something in the background tonight now, Greg. I've got a little something back here.
I noticed that.
So we're trying. This is I'm gonna move my screen this way. It's the Willie Mays statue. It's a black and white photo of the Willie Mays statue outside of Oracle Park that was done by a friend of mine a long time ago when I was in college, actually. And I can't remember the year exactly, but yeah, she was she actually is a professional photographer now, but she was in college and she was like, hey, I want to do this black and white. It was part of like a college project. I'm gonna do this black and white photo of the palm trees and of Willie Mays out at Oracle Park. And so, yeah, and it wasn't Oracle Park then. So yeah, so that's the photo. And I've had it here with me for the last long time, a decade and a half, probably longer at this point. So that's that. We're trying new things, but we're trying some new things here in the background.
You're trying different combinations and permutations of your lineup.
Something to work. So yeah, yay or nay on say, hey, Willie Mays. Like, you can't go wrong with Willie Mays, right?
That's a big yay.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. For Greg, I'm JD. Enjoy the football. We'll talk to you Wednesday. KNBR, the sports leader.